Hello, sisters. Welcome to the Sacred Medicine Podcast, weaving powerful, soulful practices into functional medicine. Step into this beautiful space of devotion and explore everything from nurturing foods, rituals, sexuality, and awakening your innate sensuality. It is time to own your radiance. This is the Sacred Medicine Podcast. Hello, and we're back for another week of the Sacred Medicine Podcast. It's been about a month since I have posted any interviews, and I've just been dealing with a lot of different things here on my end. For one, I'm moving, which is very exciting. I am not moving out of New York, but I am moving out of Connecticut. So I'm going to be living closer to the city, which is going to be nice because the commute was starting to get to be really long from Connecticut into New York City. So I'm happily moving, and that should be taking place in about a month from now. So that's what I was busy doing, really preoccupied with finding the right space and going to many, just seeing so many different buildings and places that I want to live in a home, in a condo, in a building. So there was so much to choose from. It was hard to really make a choice, but I did, and I'm really super excited to be moving on. So this week's guest is Sarah Clark. I think you're really going to love this interview. Let me tell you a little bit about her backstory. When she was 28 years old, she received a diagnosis of premature ovarian failure. But she did end up having her children through in vitro. But years later, she discovered that the root cause of her infertility was food intolerance. She's now a certified life coach, and she also is the author of Fabulously Fertile, Supercharge Your Fertility Naturally, Fabulously Fertile Cookbooks, and Fertility Preparation Program. Her fertility coaching program includes functional lab testing, supporting couples to make diet and lifestyle changes that dramatically improve the chances of a healthy pregnancy and baby. She also has a podcast called Get Pregnant Naturally. So what I really love about Sarah is that we think very much alike, and we are very much into functional medicine and how we treat issues. We believe that food sensitivities and sort of hidden infections and things like that can really cause people to have issues with their health, can cause chronic illness. But aside from that, what she focuses on is helping women conceive naturally. So we talk about, so she goes into her story, you'll hear that, but also some of the things that she does with her patients to get them to have healthy pregnancies and to get pregnant without needing in vitro. So we talk about food elimination. We talk about that she became gluten-free and dairy-free immediately when she found out she had an intolerance. Because if you consume foods that you are allergic to, unknowingly, of course, a lot of people don't know they have food allergies or sensitivities. It doesn't have to be an allergy that sends you to the emergency room, like a peanut allergy where you can't breathe. But what it is a sensitivity to a food. And for most people, dairy is a huge food that most people will react to. Now, it doesn't send them to the ER, but it does cause bloating and inflammation for sure. Maybe some GI upset, a little irritable bowel or something like that. So what she does is some really good functional tests. And we also talked about doing stool testing, which if you've heard me on the podcast before, you know how much I love stool testing. It tells you so much about what's going on in your body. And you know what? If your gut's not right, like your health is not right. And on so many different levels. I mean, honestly, it causes and triggers autoimmune issues, can cause depression, anxiety, so many things. And for Sarah, she has just seen over and over again that infertility is also one of the things that can happen when you've got issues, like chronic illness. Like if your body is on constant alert, it's trying to fight something, whether it's a parasite or candida, like yeast in the gut, or over like so much bacteria, pathogenic bacteria in your gut. If you've got that going on, do you really think that your body's going to be like, yes, I feel so good, I want to conceive, I really do want to get pregnant right now? No, it's trying to fight these chronic infections every single day. And you're sort of living a life, and you're because you don't know, number one, because nobody does comprehensive stool testing, honestly, or if they do, it goes to a local lab, and that honestly is not a good test. They hardly check for anything. The results come on half of a page, when the stool test that we do, there's a minimum of about 6 pages of information. It's fantastic. So I think you really love this if you're a woman who's trying to conceive or has had issues, or even if you're just simply like, I want to be healthier. I know I want to have a baby in a couple of years. I want to be as healthy as I can. I want the pregnancy to come easy when I'm ready. This is the episode for you. So take a listen, and without further ado, on to the show. And here we are with a new guest today, Sarah Clark. And she is going to be talking to us all about fertility. And she's just got some amazing ways that helps to make women who are doing either in vitro or who are looking to get pregnant naturally, sort of how to increase their chances of getting pregnant. So thank you for being on the show today, Sarah.
Awesome. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, totally. So tell me, just give us a little backstory with what your personal story was in your journey with becoming pregnant.
Yeah, definitely. So I always joked I was having menopausal hot flashes in my early 20s, and turns out that I was. So I had, at the time I had regular periods. I had really great skin during my teenage years, and then in my early 20s, I had a super greasy chin filled with acne. Then I had yeast infections and this weird fungal rash on my chest. And then, so I was put on birth control to help with the irregular periods and the skin. And then I had this plan of getting married at 25 and having my kids at 28. So got married at 25 and then went to have my kids at 28, came off birth control, and the periods were still irregular. So I went straight to my OBGYN just to see what was going on here, and found out I had premature ovarian failure, which is the loss of function of the ovaries before the age of 40. And was told my only way I'd have children would be with donor eggs. So I remember the OBGYN reaching up on her shelf and grabbing the IVF brochure and handing it to me, and off I went. And so it was quite of a shocking and devastating diagnosis to get at 28.
Yeah.
And and I just didn't really take any time to grieve, really, or any time to think about those other seemingly unrelated health issues. I went straight to the fertility clinic, went on a list for a donor egg, and was lucky enough at the age of 31 to have our daughter, Ava, who is about to turn 18. So this was way back in the day when you said donor eggs and people are like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Now we've got donated embryos and embryo adoption and the rise of fertility clinics. So this was many years ago, and so we were lucky enough, as I say, on the first breast transfer, and then we had 2 embryos left over. Went back in after a year. I wanted my kids close together, and then that didn't work. I was like super stressed out. My husband's like, Sarah, this kind of spaces out a little bit, and I was bound and determined to have them close together. So that didn't work out. And then we went on a separate list for another donor egg, and we're lucky enough on that first transfer. So 3 years later, my son Will was born, and so yeah, he's almost 15. So yeah, again, and then my health began to suffer. So after I had my daughter, I remember having like 9 colds. Every cold went into a sinus infection. I thought it was a great idea to take antibiotics for every sinus infection. And then I started getting these chronic sinusitis, chronic bladder infections, where I was peeing blood, became allergic to all the different antibiotics. I thought at one point I had fleas, but no, it was like hives from the antibiotics.
Oh.
I had the yeast infections became chronic. Vertigo, toenail infections, dandruff, all these health issues. But I was still doing my thing. I was still in HR at the time, and then I decided to take a life coaching course and bring that into the corporate space. And that's when I had my own personal wake up call. And then during that, I decided I wanted to get into health and wellness. So then I took a health coaching course, and that's when I discovered I had these food sensitivities. So for me, when I took out at the time dairy and gluten, took that out of my diet, and all of a sudden wasn't all of a sudden, it was over the next couple of months or so, the bladder infection started to lessen, the yeast infection started to lessen, the sinusitis, and I was like, holy cow, what the heck is this? And then a couple of years after that, I found out I had some gut infections, but I didn't discover any of this until I was 40. I was fully in menopause. And so if anyone listening, if you're still cycling naturally, there's things we can do using the tools of functional medicine. Really, diet is the first step, and then looking at stool testing and gut infections, and then also the lifestyle side of things, because you can have this super clean, beautiful diet, but if you haven't taken care of the mental, emotional stressors, that matters as well. So yeah, that was
that is
my journey.
And so, how many years from when you took the course and you were like, oh, wow, I may have like sensitivity, like then becoming gluten-free, dairy-free, until, like, I would just want to know the span of time from that first time you became gluten-free, dairy-free, and then you found out you had the gut issues, and then you started seeing resolution. Like, did it take you a few years to figure it all out?
Oh yeah. So I'm almost 49 now. So I first discovered this when I was 40. So right away I noticed like immediate change with every cold didn't go into a sinus infection. I wasn't, because I was backed against the wall with the bladder infections. I had nothing there was no antibiotics left that would work. They wanted to start doing all these different scopes, and I didn't do any of that. But and I think I had one antibiotic that would kind of work sometimes and kind of not work. And so when I started changing the diet, then those chronic symptoms started going away. And then probably maybe 2 or 3 years after that, then I discovered that I had a gut infection. So I had H. pylori and streptococcus, and I had fungal overgrowth. And then I worked to clean up the gut. And then still discovering stuff I did a hair tissue mineral analysis test and found out I had, because I was on long-term birth control. So basically for POF, it's the course of treatment is to put you on HRT and because I was so young, in my 30s, all of my 30s, like when I was trying to conceive with my kids, I was on birth control. So over 10 years, which impacts your nutrient levels and also the health of your gut. Yeah, totally predisposing me to these food sensitivities and gut infections. So it's a chicken or the egg kind of thing. But so I noticed like major change when I started doing the dietary changes, and then lifestyle changes, gut infections, and it's a journey. But I feel awesome now. I didn't back during that time. I thought I was okay, but looking at all the things I was suffering with, and I was just taking antibiotic after antibiotic.
It's and one single dose of antibiotic can screw up your microbiome for a long time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And one thing to just point out is that there is, for whoever's listening, if you have reoccurring sinus infections, It is imperative for you to get stool tested. There is a link between digestive issues and sinus problems. And so when people come to me with recurrent sinus infections, you have to evaluate the gut. And listen, there will be times when there are a lot of people out there that will say to me, oh, but I don't have any digestive issues. I don't really have any problems. And let me tell you, the things that I find when we get back the stool sample results is amazing to me. I went, just a quick personal story. I went to, I've been traveling a bunch the past couple of years, and recently, last year, and I have a history of lupus nephritis. So, I always watch my kidney function, but it ended up that my kidney function started to decline, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I feel all right. I mean, I really do. I feel good. I don't have any digestive issues. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do the test, the stool test. I think we do the same one by GI Map.
Yeah, GI-MAP, yeah.
Yeah. And I did the test. It came back, okay, loaded with, I had a few parasites. I had Giardia. I had so many imbalances. My secretory IgA was like not good.
Okay.
And I did not have a single GI symptom. Believe it or not, you would think Giardia, my God, you would have like diarrhea or abdominal cramping. Nothing. I had nothing. So for anyone out there who's listening and you hate having recurrent sinus infections, the problem isn't that you're lacking an antibiotic in your body. It's you just need to clean up your gut and you need to heal it, and then those sinus infections will go away, guaranteed. So, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, no. So you have this whole, you start learning all these things. Thank God you took that course, right? And you found out that you had all these infections. I mean, and obviously anything also related with the skin is typically digestive issues. So no one really picked that up in this whole time, right?
No. Yeah, and it's interesting because people think, and I had this similar to you, I had done all this like clean diet piece, and then I went and got the stool test, and then I found all these gut infections, and I was like, are you kidding me? All this stuff is there? I'm like, and I didn't have any digestive issues either. I was saying, my digestion is great. Like my stools are perfect, all this stuff.
Right.
And, so a lot of people think, first, why would I look at, especially when you're struggling with infertility, why would I do a stool test? But, so you got, it affects your digestion. So it could be, diarrhea, constipation, burping, gas, bloating, but it also skin. So for me, it was acne, but it could be dermatitis, psoriasis, eczema. It could be mood. I had this like seriously irritable mood. My whole almost the whole entire life, I was just cranky, and so irritability, ADHD, depression, anxiety, so mood, and you are not your mood. And then joint issues. If you got those arthritis or stiff joints, and then also an autoimmune disease. So those are clues to look deeper with the stool test for sure.
Yes. So what else did you uncover? So you cleaned up your digestion, which is not something that happens overnight. This takes months and months and months of very strict gluten-free, dairy-free. I used to put everyone on that. And doing, some supplementation and things like that. So did you do the whole regimen?
Yeah, totally. So I did the dairy-free, gluten-free, later corn-free. And I was pretty good on the diet piece. I had that really nailed in. There was no cheat days because when I cheated, I felt like garbage. So why would I cheat?
Right.
So I didn't really have any issues with the compliance there. And then when we did the stool test, then I was given a protocol, and this is, and so the protocol was number of supplements. It's all very targeted, so you know exactly, what you're taking and why. Because I had gone to years to other practitioners and came out with bags of tinctures and supplements and thousands of dollars of stuff in my closet downstairs that I didn't even know why I was taking it and what it was for. Like I had a basic idea, but it wasn't specifically targeted. And where this is it's targeted is for typically 3, 4, 5, 6 months, depending on where you are. And then it, you begin to heal. But, so for me, yeah, I had H. pylori, but I didn't have any symptoms of acid reflux or any of the other symptoms of that. So we used a tea. It's that Matula tea and Gastromend, and then Streptococcus. We used Biocidin to help with that, and then because a lot of times I was on this anti-candida diet for years, thinking thinking my whole with the yeast thing, it was a candida thing, but
Right.
the candida is opportunistic, and really you would really go after that last, because if you go after it hard, then it'll burrow in, and if you do that candida diet, it actually it'll starve it, and then it goes into hiding, and then it could come out later. So we always look at that last, and as part of my team, I work with a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. So she's the one that will review the tests and then develop protocols. And yeah,
Amazing.
that's what I used. Yeah.
So I know you work with women who are trying to get pregnant or on either IVF, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Yeah.
do you have women that come to you that want to start, but they don't know if they, are going to have issues, or do they only come to you if they're having issues?
So typically, most people come to me after they've had failed IUIs and IVF. I've had people come to me with 6, 7, 8 failed IVFs, which to me is keep going down that road and spending, thousands and thousands of dollars, and then the heartache associated with that is sort of just craziness. But yeah, typically they have had at least one treatment. I've doing my podcast and spreading the word about functional medicine and fertility, having more people coming to me now before to actually prepare. And I actually interviewed Dr. Ben Lynch, and he said he was listening to someone talk about, why do we spend over a year and a half, planning our wedding, and we do all this stuff, a year and a half, and then we want to have the baby. It's like 30 days, let's get pregnant. Whereas why can't we switch that around? Because to look at preconception health. Yeah.
Yeah. I never really thought of it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Preconception health, that it matters. It impacts your postpartum period as well as the health of your children.
Absolutely.
Both my kids have food allergies and asthma and eczema and a few other things. So yeah.
Okay. So you help women. So what have you seen so far? And do you find that the majority of the women that you work with that are having issues with fertility all have gut issues? Or tell me what you've seen.
Yeah. So basically I'll let you know how we start. So we start with having everyone do an elimination diet. And I would say everyone that comes to us says, I don't have a food sensitivity. And a lot of them will say, maybe 75 to 80% will say that they eat clean. And that's an interesting thing to say, because, I probably would have said I ate clean too, later on.
Everyone's version of clean is very different.
It's different, right? But and you do the best you can. So there's no judgment. But really, I think if you're dealing with infertility and even other kinds of any kind of health issues, looking at diet, it seems to be the absolute last place that people would even think. Meanwhile, what are you placing on your fork every day? So we look at so we start by doing elimination diet, and before that we do the food sensitivity test. We look at a LEAP MRT. It looks at 200 foods and food chemicals. And then some foods in the yellow you'd keep out for 30 to 60 days, and foods in the red you'd keep out for 90 days.
Are you doing ALCAT, or who are you doing?
We're doing LEAP MRT.
Say that again?
LEAP MRT.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. ALCAT is we did that. I think we did that years ago, but yeah, and that one can be good for looking at gluten. But yeah, we like the LEAP MRT, and this, we have no affiliation with any of these tests, and they could change as ones we feel are better. But right now, that's our favorite. You can't get it everywhere. So in Europe and in Canada, it's more the IgG, which is more the delayed food response. But the LEAP MRT, we like that one. And then we do the elimination diet. So you're taking out the top allergens, which are dairy, gluten, soy, corn, peanuts, and eggs. And then systematically reintroducing them over the course of 30 days, and then really seeing how food impacts your body. So that's the gold standard, because you can go and get that food sensitivity test, look at it and go, oh my goodness, I'm intolerant to all my favorite foods, throw it over your shoulder and not do anything about it. because a lot of times that'll happen if you have a leaky gut or intestinal
Oh,
permeability.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah, you can, and I've had that. I swear, I
So
had
many.
that test, came back. It was like all my favorite foods, and I was like really like on it. I was on it with the diet, and I got that test back, and I literally was so freaking mad. I'm like, are you kidding me? What am I going to eat? But it's
Right.
because I had the gut issues. So, and that's when I discovered that later. Um, so we started by doing that, and then the gold standard really is the elimination diet. So you can actually see how food impacts your body. So people bring back in corn, and can flare their asthma. Bring back in dairy, make them phlegmy, their sinuses. Bring back in dairy, brain fog. So it's everyone's different. So to see exactly how food impacts your body, and then you tweak it further with the food sensitivity test. And then we have people do a Dutch test, so looking at the dried urine and looking at your sex hormones, your melatonin, your cortisol levels through urine, and really gives you the exact pathways
Right.
these are going down. I had Dr. Carrie Jones on the podcast. She's the medical director of
Yes. I know her, Carrie. Hmm.
Precision Analytical, and so it's really like went through the whole entire thing and talked about actually with high FSH. So we took it from that standpoint. But so it just really gives us a good clue as to what's happening with the hormones. And then we do the stool test. So that's the GI map test, which looks at the DNA of the stool. And yeah, as you were saying, like the majority of people that we see have some sort of gut infection going on, and be it the bacterial infection, a fungal infection, a worm, a parasite, and this is typically all been missed by conventional medicine. And if you've got an infection going on, it's a stressor in the body, and the body wants to survive, doesn't want to procreate. And so to really look to develop a protocol based on those tests to then allow the body to heal. And we've since added in the hair tissue mineral analysis test too, which will look at your mineral status, because you could eat this beautiful diet, but maybe your body's not absorbing it.
Yes.
Which is the case for me. So because of the leaky gut and the long-term birth control, and I had copper toxicity and a bunch of other stuff going on. So, but yeah, with the stool test, looking at those gut infections, and then developing that protocol, and it's we regularly see women. So typically, we coach couples, and it's typically dealing with female infertility. But in the beginning, I was just coaching women. And then we just felt there was a missing part of this, because it takes two to tango, to the sperm and the egg. And so even though the testing in the beginning is for the women, we'll do a blood chemistry review, looking at their blood chem using functional reference ranges, so they're tighter. It sort of will
Right.
see it before it goes to disease. And then to flag areas. And this is not diagnosing; it's educating to say, wait, let's dig deeper. And then, if a lot of times we're seeing that men and women were passing infections back and forth, especially H. pylori. If you don't have any of the signs, we saw that being passed back and forth a lot. So it was just really digging deeper with some of these tools.
That's just so good. That's very comprehensive. I really like that approach. And so what do you do if they've got some heavy metals on board? I mean, are you chelating, or what are you doing to help with that?
Yeah, we're not doing that right away. Like our first thing is the food, the stool, and the Dutch, and then we will down the road, if we're seeing something in the hair tissue mineral analysis, but that would be not a first line of defense. And even like if they have SIBO, we've had people come in with SIBO, but then we would look at the SIBO last. So yeah, we're typically if there's an autoimmune disease, it's a lot more complicated, and we see a lot of people that coming in with undiagnosed celiac disease and struggling with infertility, undiagnosed Hashimoto, struggling with infertility. And then as we dig deeper and have them go back to their doctor, it's like, oh, then they're end up being diagnosed with this, and then making changes. There's studies now with the AIP. Actually, a study just came out in April with the efficacy for the AIP diet and reversing Hashimoto's. I'm interviewing a fellow that published this study, and also another person that published a study on AIP and Crohn's disease, Angie Alt. I interviewed her for the podcast, and she had a study that's on PubMed that talked about 75% of people that had irritable bowel disease, so Crohn's colitis, were able to reverse it with the autoimmune protocol diet. So food is really powerful, and I'll have people come in and say, "Oh, I have unexplained infertility, and oh, by the way, I have Crohn's, or I have low AMH, and oh, by the way, I have Hashimoto's." Like no one's really being able to put the whole thing together to say, well, yeah, of course that would impact you. Why are you rushing off to get an IVF treatment? It doesn't make any sense.
No, it's a waste of money. I mean,
Yeah.
let's just heal the body. It's not, like you said, it's not going to procreate if it's under chronic duress.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And so how long do women typically, what's the range of period of time that women are with you? How long do they work with you for?
Yeah, so it's a 6-month coaching program. Again, if it's more complicated, it can be longer. Like some people are coming in with premature ovarian failure, or now it's called premature ovarian insufficiency. So it could take longer. And it depends on each person. So even though they come in, sort of identifying themselves by this infertility diagnosis, we don't focus on the diagnosis. It's looking at what else is going on in the body, because those stressors where you have, if there's a gut infection, that's a stressor in the body. If there's a food sensitivity, that's a stressor. The environmental toxins, so their cleaning chemicals, our personal care, our plastics, water, all of those put stress in the body. The mental emotional side of this stuff. So infertility in itself can be, could cause trauma, put you into situational depression. Like it's extremely, it affects all aspects of your life.
Yeah.
So the mental emotional side of this is huge. And then also structural stress. So if you've got a pinched nerve or something out of alignment. So those are the different stressors, and we just, each person's different and focus on the whole body.
So when you actually fixed everything, you got your gut for yourself, I'm talking about, and you went through everything and you cleared out all of these things that were going on. Did you ever think I think you were probably like late 40s by then, like that your eggs are maybe viable, or like, or where are they? Like, what was the status of that, or was there any possibility of you being able to have one on your own, or was that ever a question that you wanted to sort of explore?
Yeah, so I didn't discover this till I was 40, so I was fully in menopause. Like I had gone way past the year of no period, and so it was it was too late for me. And so I'll never know for sure, but like all the stuff I do know now with I look back to myself too, where so I have the MTHFR gene, so my ability to methylate toxins is impaired. So I grew up in a cedar house in the forest. We were always had infestation of carpenter ants. The house was sprayed on a regular basis.
Wow, okay.
The dog died of cancer at 10. My brother has blood cancer. I have infertility. My parents are fine. They're vegans and super healthy. But as each generation gets sicker, so it's sort of as they're talking about now, the millennials being like the chronic disease going on in that generation. At each generation, epigenetics, either it's going to get healthier or sicker. So for me, I had that early on, so that potentially the environmental exposures. I remember looking in the mirror when I was 12, I had these big circles under my eyes. Potentially, I always had, non-celiac gluten sensitivity, so I don't have celiac disease. But for me, gluten is I just feel like garbage with it, and it's extremely sensitive to it. So did I have that all those years ago? I don't know. And then I was, the period went off, the skin went off, and the first line of defense is, give her the birth control pill.
The worst.
It's the absolute worst.
Mess up everything. Hormones, microbiome, your nutritional deficiencies, B vitamin deficiencies.
Yes.
I know, it's really sad. There was something you just said that I wanted to touch upon. Oh, yes. Okay. So you said you don't have celiac disease. I'm assuming that you had a celiac panel done.
So I didn't. So I have the blood test for it, but I didn't go and do the scope and do the whole because. So I interviewed Dr. Tom O'Brien. He's like the top. He's the world renowned expert
Right.
on gluten. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he talks about so basically there's like over 75 proteins in wheat. Currently, the conventional celiac test for one. You can do a wheat zoomer. It would test for 26. But there's a lot of false negatives in that. So for me, I don't have it. The blood test comes back negative, but for me, when I have gluten, it is not good for my body.
Okay.
So yeah, non celiac gluten sensitivity. But I think some people will go and get the test and go, oh, I'm fine. And then,
Yeah.
but if you're not, yeah, and if you're struggling with infertility, then also when we do that, we do that GI map test, it has the little section on there for anti-gliadin.
Right.
And for me, mine was I was still getting exposed. So even though we're like, oh, we're perfectly gluten free, you can still be those cross reactors. So dairy is a cross reactor, the same protein as wheat, corn, oats. Like if you are sensitive to gluten, you do not want to do gluten-free oats because you could still have contamination with that. And there's a whole host of other things that are cross reactors, which it's interesting when you do the stool test and it's still showing exposure. It's like, oh, wait a minute. And then even if you're that sensitive, we will tell people to even the partner to go gluten-free as well if we find that the woman is sensitive. Because even if he's going out having a beer or having some bread and coming home and kissing her, even those little crumbs on his lips could then send a reaction out off on her. So it is the gluten light and doing that kind of half, it just doesn't work. You've got to go hardcore on it.
Yes. I was going to suggest because the majority of people actually, even though they have a gluten sensitivity, their celiac will be negative. And I certainly don't send anybody to get an upper endoscopy biopsy ever. So I actually just get them for a DNA test for the special lab that will do a quick DNA test to see if you've got DQ2 or DQ8 or the non-celiac gluten sensitive genes. It's the only lab that I know that actually does this specific kind of test. And, for the women out there, it would kind of maybe be good to have them DNA tested only because, and I think the test is like maybe 300 something, I think it's like 350 maybe or 330. Because you want your moms to know if there's a genetic disposition for their future children, if they do have either gluten sensitive genes that they possibly give to them. So it would kind of be good to know, or especially if they have celiac, then the chances of their children can also get the DNA test too if there's ever a question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's also, I don't know if Ancestry does, because when I was interviewing Dr. Ben Lynch, he was talking about, he really was in favor of 23andMe. Now he's since changed that because I can't remember his rationale. And now he's saying that he prefers Ancestry.com to do the test. And I'm pretty sure it has that in there, but I may be wrong.
23andMe has the Ancestry part in it. Is that what you mean?
Oh no, so Ancestry.com is like a separate one, and then that would have this, I don't know for sure if that has a celiac in it, so I just wouldn't want to say. Like we would look at if people are, we basically we tell people when they're trying to conceive to not have gluten or dairy for 60 to 90 days, and if you don't notice any improvement, i.e. you're not pregnant, dig deeper with the testing, doing a stool test and Dutch testing. So you can easily it's not easy, but you can do a dairy and gluten-free diet. And so that's sort of where someone can start if all this is too overwhelming.
Right. Okay. Good. So the biggest thing you've seen pretty much from all the women you've worked with is that, what's the percentage that they have gut issues, gut infections, things
I
like
guess it's going to sound crazy, but it's like 100%.
Yeah. Right.
I have not seen one stool test come back saying, wow, it's clean.
It's all clean. I know. Isn't that amazing? What else have you found aside from, so the gut, do they almost all of them have a food sensitivity? I mean, I'm sure.
100% of them have a food sensitivity. And they would all like, well, these are savvy women, like they're educated. They have, they have gone down the rabbit hole of trying to figure this whole thing out. So and they would say that they're eating clean. And then as we dig further, we find, and then when you do the elimination diet, and then they realize, oh wait, this is how it makes me feel. Oh my goodness, I didn't know. So yeah, they all have a food sensitivity, and it's not forever. So it could be, sometimes if things are in the red, or if it's showing up on the stool test that you've got the high gliadin, then you don't want to have gluten again. But that's not for everyone. The thing is, gluten is one of the high. The wheat is a highly sprayed crop. So is it the chicken or the egg thing where it's sprayed with glyphosate, which is linked to infertility and a whole host of other things, or is it the wheat? So because people will go off to Europe where it's not sprayed and they say they can eat it and they feel okay. If you have, I haven't done that yet. I went to Europe prior to figuring this out, so I haven't gone over there and gone crazy with bread. So I don't know if I would, because I wouldn't want to feel sick on my holiday. So I'm not sure I would do that.
Right.
Yeah, I usually travel with digestive enzymes. So when we're out, if we're at a restaurant, everyone just starts off with a digestive enzyme, and hopefully, if you get glutened or dairy, that you'll be able to not experience any issues if you have the digestive enzyme with you.
Do you use the digestive enzyme that's specific for if there's some kind of hidden gluten in the food?
Yeah, we just got it. So we started using bitters, which really does taste bitter. That's rotten. And I just got a new one in I can't remember the name of it. It starts with the Alzaria or and that one is specifically for gluten. And I think Dr. Tom O'Brien has, I'm not sure if that's his line or not, because this is from the functional nutrition practitioner I work with, but he has specific ones that if you are out and you happen to get glutened or dairy, that will help with, minimizing the reaction.
Yes.
Because it can take, does he? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But I also, I forget, I have one too that I carry just in case. It's called, I think it's called maybe Glutenzyme, or Gluten Ease, something to that effect. But it does have extra specific enzymes in there that'll help break down gluten if there happens to be some form of contamination or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're abroad and you're not really sure if it's a different language, you don't know what you're saying.
Yeah, with that, I just if someone doesn't know what I'm saying, I'm like, I just don't eat there. I'm like, okay, when I say gluten, they say what? I'm like, nope, I have to leave.
Yeah, exactly. They do have, they used to have on, gosh, I'm trying to remember, maybe if you just Googled it, but there's a gluten-free website that in different languages, it'll tell you, like print it out, and it'll say in Italian and French that you cannot consume gluten. And you just show that to them, and then they can read it in their own language and understand that you need things with no gluten, no bread, blah, blah, blah. So, nice. Yeah, if you just Googled it, I don't remember the website offhand, but if you put some like Italian gluten-free travel, whatever, I don't even know how to put it, but something will show up. And there is one site that has all the different languages, and so you just print it out and bring it with you.
Nice. So yeah, I'm a huge foodie. So wherever I go, when I'm just planning a trip right now to Vancouver Island, and I'm literally like, okay, what are all the gluten-free, dairy-free places I can find? And typically, I did a trip a couple years ago to California, and like there's tons of, I don't know, I find there's tons of options.
Oh,
if you are on, like if you are on the autoimmune protocol, like that's a lot more restrictive, so that can be a little more difficult. But so either you eat a little bland, or if you find a place that is going to be able to cater to allergies, and basically just say I have an allergy, because if they say it's a preference, then they don't seem to care. I just say it's an allergy.
Yes, exactly. More and more places have their own gluten-free menu now, which is really nice.
Totally.
All right. Well, let's see. Was there anything that I missed or we didn't touch upon that you feel is really important for women to know?
Yeah, I think it's with infertility, if it's to not focus on the diagnosis, to really see what else is going on in your body. And I always ask women, well, what do you think the issue is? And sometimes, like a small percentage of the time, they say they don't know. Other times, they're like, oh, well, I think it might be that I have IBS, or I think it might be that I have these constant headaches, or as they think about other things going on in their body, that there may be a reason. And to me, forging ahead to an IVF or an IUI, like an IVF has an average 30% success rate it'll take at a cost of $60,000 because it'll take three goes to actually have it work potentially. So at a cost of $60,000, and an IUI has a 10% success rate. So instead of going over there and spending thousands of dollars, and then you're potentially having issues postpartum because you haven't worked on all your preconception health, and then it impacts the health of your children. So to me, taking this time, like a minimum, it takes 60 days, it takes 90 days for the egg to renew itself, and the life cycle of the sperm is 70 to 80 days. So really taking like a minimum of 3 months, probably better 6 months to a year,
Right.
to work on your preconception health. It just makes sense. Like it's not like, I like the analogy of the wedding. Like, why did we spend a year and a half on a wedding and a month on preparing the body for a baby?
Yeah, right. And so when women work with you, we start, discovering things that are going on. They're doing elimination diet. They're doing taking the supplements and all the testing. And it's a 6-month program. So are they right after the 6 months? Are they like, okay, we're 6 months, we're going to start now? Or are you like, no, we still need, because sometimes these things can take a little time, especially to heal
Oh
the
yeah.
gut. It can take from 9 to 12 months. So are they sort of
Yes.
waiting? Are you having them wait a little more, or at 6 months they're starting to try?
Some of them will do. Some of them will start going straight to IVF after that time, or some of them will surprise themselves and be pregnant at that point. So it's just different for everyone. But if yeah, because we basically will have you go through the protocol, then we'll retest you to make sure, is it all gone? Because a lot of times there's the biofilms there on the parasites and the bacteria, and when you uncover it. Actually, sometimes the second test you find more. So you may not find H. pylori on the first run through, and then you find it on the second run. We found that a lot during the retest. And then to take the time to do the protocol, which is not as long the second run, it could be 30 to 60 days. So it is very difficult on this journey, because it doesn't matter how old you are or people are when they come to see me. They're past the time that they want to have their baby. So everything seems in a rush and a panic. And even saying
Right.
spend 6 months, they're like, oh my goodness, are you kidding me? No, I'm going to go over to the fertility clinic because next month I can get this going. But it's that quick solution, which it just impacts your health and your children's health. And I don't know, it's difficult, because if most of us can get pregnant naturally, why do we know so many people going to the fertility clinic? And it's because, technology is there. Why wouldn't I use it? And we're impatient. But why haven't we looked deeper to understand why it's not working in the first place? Like, the body's trying to tell you something, and we're just like, oh, just give me some injections and some drugs. And here's me saying this, but I went and did that and was lucky enough to have my children. But I'm dealing with food sensitivities, and my son has like high sensitivity to gluten, not celiac, but high sensitivity to gluten. And keeping teenagers dairy and gluten free is a nightmare.
It's very hard.
It's a freaking nightmare. So my daughter is almost 18. She finally gets it, and my son he's almost 15. He's starting to get it, but his moods would just be just a foul individual. And I'm like, dude, that's not you. You're a nice guy. But when you have gluten, you are just, like, he would be diagnosed with ADD, and he'd probably be on medication like a lot of his friends, which I don't want to do that. So we manage it with food and manage it other ways. I'm looking at homeschooling and stuff now. So there's all sorts of other things to look at things differently, and hopefully you teach your kids to know their bodies and know what works for them. And that's the same thing with your parent, like ourselves, to know what's your body trying to tell you.
Right. Right. So true. So one quick thing and I don't know the answer to this question. Do you know if, let's say, a woman were to get pregnant, she were to have like these couple of worms, couple of parasites, and obviously it's all causing sort of, there, when you have that, there's obviously a risk, more than risk. It's known that you'll have leaky gut. And if you have leaky gut, you won't be absorbing nutrients. Therefore, the child there's a high risk that they will be also somewhat lacking in those nutrients as well. Do you think that that there's any way that, because when you have a parasite or a worm, sometimes they multiply. And can it be passed to the baby? I don't know that answer.
Yeah, I was coaching we coach a lot of people in the medical profession, and someone had that question because it was like, if I don't go and do something about this, because we found it on the second run that there was still some things in there. If I don't go do something about this, can that be passed? And we couldn't find any scientific data saying that it could, but I don't to me. So when I interviewed Dr. Ben Lynch, he talked about actually infertility being passed on. So the gene for infertility is turned on, and he's seeing now that it can be passed on to future generations. So you're going off to IVF because you haven't figured out all your stuff, and then it's passed on to your kids. So, and then if you've got a gut infection, look what happened to me. So I had my kids, and then I hadn't taken care of those food sensitivities and gut infections, and I did not have postpartum depression. I had postpartum, when I look back, and now I guess it's called postpartum rage. I was just an irritable person. And I was just I'm a doer. I get things done, all that kind of stuff. But it was a hard period of time, and I had no idea that I wasn't supposed to be feeling irritable 90% of the time. So right. It's hard.
I mean, it's really, you became pregnant even despite the fact that all these things were happening, right? Even though you had a donor egg, but obviously you must have had low reserves, because I think that having the emotional swings is also, obviously it's a hormonal thing due to pregnancy, but I think that there's in large part a nutritional, if you're trying to have take care of a newborn, but your reserves are low and your body's really needing some B12, some B vitamins. You don't know that you're needing methylated. You have no idea. So even if you were on a prenatal,
folic acid I was taking.
You were taking regular prenatals with just regular folic acid, you said?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Do not take folic acid. Yeah. Again, I go back to Dr. Ben Lynch. Methylated folic acid is synthetic. It's useless. So exactly. Methylated folate.
Yes, totally. And I just wrote a post on this, a quick Insta story about, I had a girlfriend of mine who texted me her recent lab results. She's been having some hormonal problems, weight gain, all these things. And she said, I said, what's your B12, by the way? And she's like, my doctor told me it was normal. And I said, well, send it to me. She sends it to me. It's 220. And I said, no, this is not normal. You have severe deficiency. And it's completely related. And if that's deficient, then everything else is deficient, and your stores are low. She's like, I'm so tired. I gained weight. I tried to exercise. I'm like, it's not lack of exercise. Trust me. This is such a deeper issue than this. And so I had put a post on there on my Insta story about B12, like, this is not normal. And even the lab report said within normal within range.
conventional range, right?
Yeah, which is ridiculous. So just going back to, I also wrote on that post, yes, she needs supplementation. She also needs more testing, but this isn't where it stops. You just also don't just give the B12. You have to figure out why she's so depleted.
Absolutely.
And please check your MTHFR. It's a genetic marker. It tells us whether or not you can break down, or if you need a methylated version of B12 and folate. So you can't just start regular B12 that you get from like your pharmacy down the street, which I would never consume anything from a local pharmacy because it just has so many things in it that you don't want in your body. Preservatives and colors and all this other stuff that should be in there. But yes, an MTHFR. And you said that you checked that with your women, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So important, so critical, and so key. So yeah, that's really amazing. All right. So I think that's it. How can people find you, by the way? Tell us.
Yeah, so they can find me on the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast. It's on iTunes and Stitcher. And then also they can find me at FabFertile, FABfertile.com. And I have a free fertility diet. So it's a fertility diet freebie. So freebie, FREEBIE.com. And they can do the fertility diet there. So basically dipping their toe into part of the elimination diet. So it's a 3-day program that you can do with your partner and really start making changes that are, prepare your body for a baby. So that's the fertility diet freebie.
Great. Well, this has been really amazing. Thank you so much for sharing some light on this subject, which is just so common these days. And I mean, I've had girlfriends who have been dealing with infertility many years ago, and it's just been something that I'm just seeing a trend towards more and more women. And thank you for, doing the work that you do to kind of get these women well, get them better, get their bodies ready for pregnancy. And so thank you so much for being on today.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was great. It was great speaking to you.
Thanks so much for your time, and we'll speak soon. Okay, was I right or what? Sarah she's just so informative, and she loves what she does, and she helps so many women. It's just been so great interviewing her. So if you want to learn more, head on over to margaretromero.com/episode 122. And I also wanted to announce a new offering that I am going to be coming out with in the next week or two. And so I just wanted to announce it here first. So I'm going to be so if you live in the New York, Connecticut areas, New York City, upstate New York, Connecticut, I am going to be offering an online urgent care sort of after hours, but also there'll be certain times during the day, every day, that I will be available for appointments for urgent care calls. So this means that if you like things that you would go to an urgent care, this is not emergency things like you have chest pain, you have severe abdominal pain. No, this is for urgent care, sore throat, sinus infections, cough, fever, the flu, cold sores, yeast infections, things like that, where you get to make an appointment, speak to me, and I can prescribe whatever it is that is needed to treat you. And also it's not 100% conventional medicine, which I can do because I do that on the side. I work urgent care. I was also emergency medicine trained. So I'm offering this. It's really, I'm looking forward to doing this, and I'm excited. I'm really excited to be able to offer this for you. The majority of my patients come to me for things that are not urgent. They usually come to me for things that are chronic illnesses and hormones and perimenopausal and symptoms and things like that. But now I've just opened up to urgent care calls, and this will be strictly telemedicine. So through a video, you don't have to leave your house. If you're feeling really, not good, you're achy, you're sore, you've got the flu, or you have no time to make an appointment, because let me tell you, I know you call your doctor and they're booked. They're booked. And then you have no choice but to go into an urgent care, wait there for a couple of hours, especially if you live in the New York City area. You wait a couple of hours, you get seen, it's taking time out of your day, or you're going at the end of the night, but you don't really feel good, you have that fever, or you're just feeling so crummy and your body aches so much. And then it's the middle of winter and you have to go outside and now wait in a room full of other sick people. It's just the worst. So I've come up with these it's in technology today. It's you can do telemedicine. And so I'm really excited to bring this to you. And it'll include a little twist of functional medicine in there if you want. And it's really what I do now too, even at the urgent care that I work at. I always add a little functional medicine in there. So once that is out, I will post it on here, but watch for it. I'm also going to be posting it on Instagram. Okay, well, have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all next week for Women's Wednesday. Bye for now.